bad fragrance habits that are ruining your life. So there are quite a few of these, and I am guilty of some of them myself. But I'm going to start with the most common fragrance mistake, I suppose, that a lot of people make. So you have your fragrance, you spray it on your wrist, and you rub your wrists. Don't do that. Pretty much everyone I've ever seen has done this at some point. They think, doing this will help spread the fragrance around, make it more expressive, more projection, that sort of thing. Don't do this, because rubbing your wrists with your fragrance, this friction will actually destroy the fragrance and make it perform less well than it would have if you didn't rub your wrists. So this is because fragrances are mostly made out of alcohol, and when you introduce that friction and heat to the fragrance, the alcohol will start evaporating and breaking down, and the fragrance will become weaker because of that. So, it will affect the longevity, it'll affect how the fragrance smells, and again, in general, it will become weaker. So it's really best to not do that. It's just better to spray it directly on your pulse points and don't touch it. Resist the urge to do this grasshopper thing. So that'll ensure that the fragrance instead really soaks into your skin, into your pores, and sticks around as long as possible. Now, besides this really common one, there's another really common one, which I used to do, that I learned not to do it, which is spraying a little bit of fragrance into the air and walking through the cloud to kind of, get this fragrance across your entire person. But this is another thing that you should not do for several reasons. A, it is a waste of whatever fragrance you're using. B, your fragrance really isn't going to stick to you that well. You may think so, walking through this cloud, but in reality, it's just kind of a few little droplets maybe into your hair, onto your clothes, but that's not going to help the fragrance stick to you. It's not going to last very long, and most of it's just going to not get on you at all. It's going to fall on the floor, on the wall, whatever is nearest to you. It is a big waste of whatever fragrance you're using, which you do not want to do, especially if you're using a very expensive fragrance. So really the best way to apply fragrances in general are to apply it to your pulse points, so your neck, your wrists, your elbows, you could put a little bit in your hair, some on your clothes as well, but the pulse points are important because they're warm areas of the body that help express the perfume oils that you're wearing, and also the perfume has a chance to soak into the skin. So instead of just having this superficial layer of your fragrance, just put it directly into these points on your body, and it will stick around much more efficiently and for much longer. Now, another one that quite a lot of people do is improperly storing their fragrances. So, fragrances, again, are mostly alcohol, some water, and then the fragrance oil. And they are pretty resilient, but if you don't store them properly, they can start to go bad, and the last thing you want is for your expensive fragrance to smell strange or not good anymore. So a big mistake that people make is, for instance, putting their fragrance bottle next to a sunny area, like the windowsill. It gets a lot of sun every day for several hours every day. The sun can eventually break down the components of the fragrance and make it smell a little bit off. Not to say that it's expired, because fragrance can't really expire, but it can go kind of iffy. So keep it out of the sun, and in the same vein, keep it out of warm areas, because again, the heat can also break down the fragrance. So again, keep it away from sunny areas that get kind of warm, keep it away from generally warm areas in your house, and instead put the bottles in a cool, dry, shady area, maybe like a drawer or your closet or something like that. And as long as you do that, the fragrance should remain completely intact for a very long time. Sometimes, there have been instances of fragrances lasting decades, as long as they're stored properly, and they still smell fine. So keep that in mind, especially if you have a perfume bottle sitting by the window or, something like that. Then, the next kind of bad fragrance habit that a lot of people do includes buying low-quality fragrances or cheap fragrances. So, suppose, you see a fragrance that is very, very affordable, so you figure, all right, I'll just buy it, it's not going to cost me much. Sometimes that fragrance may be fine, depending on what it is, but if something is a little too cheap, a little too good to be true, there's a good chance that that is a low-quality fragrance, and it's not going to smell good, it's not going to last a long time, it's just not going to be all that great. So even if you didn't spend that much money on it, it's still a poor investment and you kind of wasted your money. So it's really a good idea to do your research before you buy any type of fragrance, because you don't want to buy the wrong fragrance. You don't want to buy a bad fragrance or just kind of be ripped off. So this is especially important when you're buying kind of alternatives to popular fragrances, because some websites may market kind of these scam fragrances. They may say, here's Creed Aventus for $50 when it should be $300. So obviously, if you order that, you're probably not going to get the real Creed Aventus. So you'd have to watch out for kind of those more obvious scams, but also the less obvious scams, which may be just manufacturers creating these maybe decants or something similar of other fragrances, and they're just much weaker, more diluted, watered down, and you're not really getting your money's worth. So make sure you research who you're buying from, your vendor, and check the reviews and things like that. So that way you can actually make sure that whatever you buy is as high quality as possible, and that will help the fragrance perform as it should. Another mistake that people make is not layering their fragrances. So a lot of people just, randomly put on a fragrance and call it a day, which is fine. You can do that. But if you really want to maximize how your fragrance performs, layering is a good option. And not just layering with other fragrances, but layering with lotions or oils or, soaps, things like that. Because if you really want to smell good, you gotta compound that scent that you have. So, you could start in the shower with a nice soap or body wash, scented body wash, so you have a nice subtle scent. Usually soaps don't have a really strong smell once you apply it to your skin, but a little bit, and of course you're getting clean in the process. Then, moving on from that body wash or soap, put on some scented lotion. That always adds a little bit more of kind of this more natural, subtle scent. And lotion is also really good for helping perfume stick to the skin. So then, of course, once you put on the oil or the lotion, then you could put on that fragrance that you want to wear. And if you're feeling more adventurous, you could even layer a different type of fragrance on top of that to, again, compounding the scent thing. So doing all that is really, really good for making sure you smell good, but also making sure you smell good all day instead of just for a few hours. So even once your perfume starts fading naturally after a few hours, you will still have a really nice smell because of everything you did previously. It does take a little bit of extra effort, but it is definitely worth it if you want to make sure you smell as good as possible. So those are pretty much my main tips and recommendations for making sure you kind of avoid these kind of bad fragrance habits. Hopefully this video was helpful. If it was, of course, you could leave a like, maybe subscribe, maybe leave a comment. And I make videos throughout the week, so stick around for those.